My name is Mayim Bialik, and I played Cece Bloom in Beaches. It's kind of funny to have your awkward pre-adolescence commemorated on film, but I was 12 when Beaches came out, or when I did Beaches, and I was 13 when it premiered. So I basically think of it as a live snapshot of what I was like when I was 12 years old. I was considered a late bloomer for the industry because most kids that I knew who were actors had been acting since they were very, very young. And I was kind of the exception that I started when I was 11, at the old age of 11.
Hit it, Toots.
I went through about 4 months of auditions to get my role. And I remember the part came through my agent, just like a lot of other parts had come through. I had done one feature film when I was 11. It was my first job. It was in a horror film. And then I had done a bunch of TV, and then the audition came down for Beaches. And my parents had always said that I looked like Bette Midler and Barbra Streisand when I was a kid, when I was younger, and still when I was 11, 12. And that's actually how they touted me when my parents were looking for an agent for me, that we have this Bette Midler, Barbra Streisand kind of kid, and she's really, whatever, she's funny, she likes to mimic, she's good with accents. But a lot of people thought because I didn't have red hair, it wasn't right, and I remember seeing a lot of redheads at the audition, and the funny thing was there was a lot of redheads who looked nothing like Bette Midler, so it was kind of funny.
Gotta laugh a little.
I had to sing, I had to do a scene, and then eventually I got to meet Gary Marshall, the director, and then finally got to meet Bette Midler and Barbara Hershey at I think it was the final audition in a big soundstage.
Come on, Cece. What do you say we just pack it in and we go back to the Bronx, huh?
My parents are from the Bronx, so I had no problem doing a New York accent or doing an East Coasty accent. Of course, Bette Midler is not from New York. She's from Hawaii. But it was kind of, written into the part, this kind of under the boardwalk, kind of rough and tough girl, and that came really easy for me to do a kind of accent like that, and just kind of trying to work on having some sort of attitude, because Bette Midler she is larger than life. She's got this great presence, and I wanted to try and match that. I think Gary was the perfect kind of prototype for me to be working with someone who shared my accent, Gary being from the Bronx. So, the accent that I grew up with, he had too, even more so,
Okay, perfect, cut.
So I think it helped having someone who really, he fit well into my practicing, because I had been used to practicing with my parents who had his accent, and then I kind of just shifted into working with someone who had that accent. So I think it helped me stay in that attitude. He did really well keeping us focused. He was very funny, he was very open, he was very welcoming, he worked very well with us. So it was a really positive experience having him as a director. And in particular, the scene where I have my little hissy fit after I see that the other girl has auditioned when I was auditioning. There's the scene with Lainie Kazan in the dressing room, and I remember he worked very hard with me on that. He really wanted to get it just perfect.
It's your fault they picked a kid. It should have been me.
I remember he really wanted me, to try and find something from my life that made me upset and work with that, because it was the, upset scene.
You gotta stop! You're ruining my career! Just leave me alone! Leave me alone!
There was a certain amount of naivete on my part, probably largely because I hadn't been acting that long, because I had only been acting a year, that I didn't really get that it was going to be like a major motion picture, that it was like really going to come out in theaters. I couldn't cognitively grasp it. So I just kind of looked at it like, oh, these are just steps, I got a call back, great, But my parents, always kept me very, very grounded, really throughout my acting career. So I really credit them with helping me stay normal and trying to focus on what's important in life, which was, all the other things that I was doing in life. And my bat mitzvah was a year away, which was, a huge thing. So I remember the the morning of my bat mitzvah, I was on the cover of the LA Times calendar section. It was an interview about me in Beaches, and I think the premiere for Beaches was the week of my bat mitzvah. So it was a lot of other stuff going on in my life.
You gotta give a little, take a little, and let your poor heart break a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. Oh yeah!
So the big secret that I guess we can let out, since this is going to be the DVD of Beaches, is that that is not my voice in the movie. I sang at all my auditions, and apparently Bet had a very strong idea of what she wanted her voice to sound like when she was younger. So I sang along with the track and had to endure, you know, everybody on the crew coming up to me and saying, "Why isn't it your voice? You have a great voice." But I have a very different kind of voice. I have a much less polished voice than the voice that they ended up with. And I actually felt like the voice sounded much older than my 12-year-old little body could convey. But I think it was something that Bet was very particular about, and, you know, rightfully so.
That's the story of, that's the glory of love.
The part that Bet worked with me on was the singing and dancing number. There's actually kind of an interesting story about that. I had been dancing since I was 4. You know, I was a ballet dancer and I did jazz, and I learned to tap dance for the auditions, for the Beaches auditions. I had a great dance teacher. Her name's Patsy Metzger, and we got a little fake staircase, and she taught me how to tap down the stairs because that was in the script. And so, so I worked a lot on the dancing, and Bet, I guess, didn't want the character to be so dancey. She wanted to have more attitude in the dance rather than dance. So we had choreographed this whole thing, and I worked with the choreographer, and it was all this thing. And when Bet saw it, she was kind of like, "Well, that's great, but that's not, you know, what we want Cece to do." So she kind of re-choreographed it, which was exciting working with her so closely on the dance numbers.
Don't you recognize me? No. I do a couple of routines in the Sammy Pincus Kitty show.
We filmed the boardwalk scenes to look like Atlantic City in Coney Island, which was a place kind of that had a lot of fame in my mind, just because I had heard about it when I was a kid. I grew up in LA, so I didn't grow up going to Coney Island. But I had my first Nathan's hamburger. I didn't like hot dogs at that time, but I had a Nathan's hamburger, and it was amazing. And my mom would bring in lunch for me, you know, when it was lunchtime, and then I would eat and take a nap. We had family come and visit us at Coney Island, family that lived, you know, in the New York area, because I still have most of my family there, or at that time I did, and so they would come visit.
Who is that woman?
What woman?
It's no woman, that's my mother.
It was great. I mean, it was really a larger-than-life kind of place. It looked like the pictures from my parents' childhoods. You know, we do have pictures of my parents on Coney Island, my dad in a leather jacket holding a hot dog. And so it was really a place that I had heard so much about. And it was actually my first trip to New York in general that I remembered. We had gone when I was a little kid to visit my grandparents. But my mother did an amazing job giving me a real flavor for Manhattan. And we also did drive through the Bronx and saw where she used to live. But it was my first time to the Statue of Liberty and to kind of all these New York landmarks that I had heard about my whole life.
Want a drag?
A drag? You know, a drag on my cigarette. It'll calm your nerves.
Well, I didn't smoke. I didn't know how to smoke. You know, I'm glad to say I had no experience with it. My mom was actually the one underneath the boardwalk with me lighting the cigarettes, and she would give them to me. She was not a smoker. Neither of my parents were smokers, but I guess just instead of trying to teach me how to light up a cigarette, my mom, you know, would, you know, puff on it. It was really funny, and she would give them to me, and I would, you know, get ready. And I mean, I had seen enough people. Unfortunately, I had grown up in a culture where you see everybody smoking in TV and in the movies, so I kind of knew what to do. But I think some of my naivete and some of my ignorance worked for the character, because this was a girl who was really trying to be bigger than herself, and, you know, for her, smoking was part of that personality. I have one friend who I actually worked with when we were 11 in a student film, an AFI film, and she and I have written for all the years since. So almost 20 years now. We've written letters. We see each other, if we can, once a year. And it's definitely a friendship that I could see being kind of modeled after this kind of Beaches relationship. And I think that's something that Beaches really appeals to. It appeals to those friendships that people have. And I think that's what really strikes a chord, that people can see being that committed to someone and loving someone that much and being there for them as a friend.
Be sure to keep in touch, Cece, okay? Well, sure. Friends, aren't we?
Beaches completely transformed my life. The kind of notoriety that I got after the film led to me getting a series. I went on to do Blossom for 5 years. So I don't think I would have gotten, I know I wouldn't have gotten my own television series without Beaches. So it changed my life completely. I look back very fondly on the time that I was acting, but I also feel like it's a very difficult place for a kid to be. And sometimes when I go out on auditions now, because I still do audition for things, you know, I see little kids and you know, it makes me it's kind of bittersweet, because I hope that they're enjoying it, but I also hope that they're not being pressured into it. And I was very fortunate that I wasn't pressured into it. And I hope other young people can have that experience too, of really doing something because you love it and because you like it, and it makes you happy, and not because you want to be rich and famous or please someone else. Everybody on the film was really incredible. We had a great crew. Obviously, the cast was, you know, stellar. I loved working with Lainey Kazan and with Bet and getting to meet Barbara Hershey and Marcy. I mean, it was just a great, you know, kind of fusion of a lot of people really wanting to make the best film they could. So, you know, I got a lot out of it professionally, even though I didn't realize it at the time, even though I was kind of naive at that time. But it was a very positive experience, and you know, when it came out, I still was kind of not really getting that it was going to be like a big movie and people were going to go buy tickets in the theater and stuff. But looking back, I can see how important it was in my life, and I really appreciate it.